Obvious because the villi are labeled. So where do we find villi?
Small intestine.
In the small intestine. And what's the importance of villi?
Absorption.
Increase the surface area for absorption. Have you guys done your homework yet? Good enough. Okay. So one of the questions in your homework is, name 4 specializations that you find in the small intestine to help absorption, to aid in absorption. So let's go from microscopic all the way up. Microscopic, or not microscopic all the way up. Let's go from the smallest structure that's used to increase surface area all the way up to what we can see with the naked eye. So on the surface of the cells, we find there are microvilli. Okay? Saying that they're on the surface of the cell is a little bit misleading because they're actually projections of the cell, right? So those are microvilli. All right, going on up, then what's the second way in which we've increased the surface area for absorption? Villi. Then we have many villi folded into plicae. Plicae circularis. Then what? This is the one that students have the most trouble understanding because we've looked at these things on a really small level.
The length of it. Okay.
The length of the digestive tract is all convoluted and wound up inside the abdominal cavity, isn't it? Okay, so that's number 4. All right, so each one of these structures up here is a villus. Villus, 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 villus. Plural, they're called villi. So what you're seeing in a villus are folds of the mucosa, and if we run our finger up in this direction, we're following that epithelial tissue layer. Okay, so the walls or the sides of the villus are going to be made up of these simple columnar epithelial cells that have microvilli on their surface. Embedded between those cells are going to be, well, you can't really see them unfortunately, you kind of can. What are these things? Those little white wine glass shaped structures. Not between the epithelial cells up there. They're goblet cells, absolutely. So the goblet cells are secreting what? Secreting mucus. At the base of these villi, we're going to see these invaginations. Okay, there's a portion of one there. Here's a pretty good one that shows you its actual connection to the epithelium itself, but there are several indicated up here. These are intestinal crypts. And at the intestinal crypts, digestive enzymes are going to be secreted onto the mucosa. Okay. This layer then is going to be submucosa. You know it has to be, even though you don't see that it's made of this loose connective tissue and fibrous connective tissue. But you know that it is because this is very obviously smooth muscle. And this up here is very obviously the mucosa. And what layer comes in between? The submucosa. Okay, so it's not about sometimes what for sure you see. It might be what you don't see. But it also sometimes you have to get to these answers by deductive reasoning. Okay, so which portion of the small intestines are we in? Anybody know? There's a jejunum? You sure? What are these structures?
Glands.
Oh, that's the ileum.
Not glands. What are they? Aggregated lymph nodules, or not aggregated lymph nodules, but aggregated lymphatic tissue, okay, called Peyer's patches. You always find Peyer's patches in the submucosa thing, right there, like submucosa. So if you see Peyer's patches, where must we be looking in the digestive tract, or in the small intestines, more specifically, which region? Ileum. Why do you know that it's the ileum stuff?
The colon look different.
Why are they there?
Oh.
What do they do? Anybody remember? It's lymphatic tissue. Lymphatic tissue, basically it's a clump of white blood cells. What section of the colon comes immediately after the ileum? Cecum. It's the large intestine. Okay, there's a valve there called the ileocecal valve. Okay, so right just before the ileocecal valve, in the ileum, we find these patches of white blood cells. Why?
So no bacteria will get into your small intestine.
So when that valve opens to let fluid or chyme through from the ileum into the cecum, that anything that backflows from the cecum, which could contain a whole lot of bacteria, doesn't flow back into the ileum and then colonize the small intestine and ultimately result in some sort of infection. We've got a lot of beneficial bacteria in the large intestine or the colon that stays in there to help us digest things and help us create vitamins. We don't want those things getting into the small intestine. We want to keep them in the ileum. When they do get into the small intestine, it can cause all kinds of havoc, wreak all kinds of havoc. They kind of grow out of control and then make you sick, right? They interfere with absorption. So you must be looking at the ileum because you see your virus patches, right?